This September, the EWG Scarlet Knights Alumni Association invites you to join us to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the founding of Exeter West Greenwich High School. In this video series, we'll chat with longtime faculty and staff to remember some stories you know, and maybe a few you haven't heard.
I remember my first year here. Probably was my only rough year here because I had taught junior high school, and coming up to high school was different because there was a lot of anger from kids who came back from North Kingstown. And understandably, I can see that. Not that they were bad kids. You could tell that that class was not happy that they were brought back from NK and Coventry, I think. And so they were an unhappy group. Not on the whole, but enough of them that was there. 92, 93. So 93 was my first class graduating. Yeah. As the year went on, it went away, and then later on it went away completely. But I remember that. But you know, you can't have perfection every year. So, many videos over the years. Probably the best story I can tell you about a video. I'm not quite sure of the students, but they were showing their videos in front of the class, and they were doing Shakespeare, a scene in Shakespeare. And as they started to play it, one of the kids stood up and started running towards the front of the room. And suddenly the video showed up. It was a decoy deer. And one of the kids went up behind the decoy deer and did something inappropriate with the decoy deer. And it was on TV, everyone was like, oh, okay. And they said, you were supposed to edit that out. They didn't. So I said, give it to me. Mrs. Christian was the principal at the time. I said to them, I said, I got this video in my hand, inappropriate. I said, if I showed that to Mrs. Christian, said, don't. I said, take it home, edit it without the decoy deer, and give it back to me. And they did. But that was a kid got up, wrong one. He started running towards the front. But I remember doing many video projects early on before video editing was easy. So a lot of kids have broken into places that they shouldn't have been. Many people did video projects in the lad school. Don't tell anyone. A volleyball. Now, volleyball was famous for many years. I played volleyball when I was a teenager back in a racquetball court, so I knew what it was. When I came here, I found out they had a volleyball court, and I said, wow, cool. Now, it wasn't a typical volleyball court. It was wider than it was longer, which is different than a racquetball court. But we got used to it. We played off the windows. We knew when we knew if we hit they had a speaker system in there. Yeah, we knew it. We had to know that. And Mr. Hamlin, myself, Mr. Richardson, who had a bad leg, basically would just stand there and circle around. We played, and we used to beat the phys ed department all the time. And one time, the volleyball team came down to play us, and we beat them. It was Mr. Carpenter and 3 of us. We beat the volleyball team. So it became very famous. We used to do Midnight Madness. I used to watch the volleyball courts. And then at one point, they decided to make it a room with, put a floor, 2 rooms actually. They put a floor in it, and now it's gone. So, you know, every time I go in there, I said, we used to play volleyball here. And people will turn around and say, what's volleyball? I remember playing, we had the prom promise after the prom. And we went to Physical Pursuit once. And I remember playing volleyball there, middle of the night, overnight, playing that. The only time I ever did karaoke was here. It was Mr. Hamlin, Miss Furr, and someone from the junior high. I can't remember her name, but we were doing Roxanne, which is about a prostitute. Well, why we're singing that in the middle of Midnight Madness? All right, Roxanne. I remember doing that, and that's the only time I've ever done karaoke. And my sisters are really big into karaoke, and for a while back in the early 2000s, we would go out and they would sing, and they come on up. No, yeah, that's why I play bass guitar. I just sit quietly in the background playing bass. I remember one night, I don't know why this comes up, we were rolling eggs with our noses across. We had, I'm not sure which one it was, but I remember we had an egg race. We had to get on the ground and roll the eggs with our noses.
In the middle of the night.
Right, well, it was in the gym. We had a race. We had to go down the middle of the basketball court, pass it on to someone else. We had a relay race. Don't break the egg. Rolling. I don't know why. That comes up as the first memory of Midnight Madness. Probably a few years after you graduated, we had sumo wrestling. We used to have the suits, and I remember getting in one saying, like 155,000 degrees inside, you're like this, and you run towards another student, and hopefully you knock him over, because if you were knocked over, you weren't getting up. You just like this. I remember one time, I beat two kids, and the third kid knocked me right over. I'm on the ground saying, help me. We had a lot of snow one night, and coming in a not major snowstorm, they had it, and it started snowing during, so I came in around 10 o'clock, and driving through the snow to get there, slipping and sliding all over the place.
Do you remember Frank Santos being here?
Oh yeah, he was at the physical pursuit too. He was at there. He did something in the one of the areas. I remember him doing at Midnight Madness a couple of years in a row, and he made people. I'm not saying I'm not a believer. I remember getting up there, and there were like 15 people lined up, and I was called up there a couple of times, and he said first thing he did was pull you forward. He said something, he pulled you forward, and if you went forward, you were okay. If you kind of like, I was always, oh, okay, go away. So I sat down, and a few times, I'm not going to mention the teacher. I remember a teacher singing like a virgin in front of everyone. That's why I will never get pulled forward by a hypnotist. So we did those talent shows, really. That's what they were. And we did, Mary Christian and I did a skit one time. I can't remember, it had something to do with a restaurant. She mentioned that. We wrote it together, and I'm not sure if she said that, but we did write it together. And she came up with an idea, and I wrote the skit, and we worked on it, and wow, that's amazing. It's sort of a combination between a talent show and a Saturday Night Live, Friday Night Live. We should bring that back now. Friday Night Live. We still do Spirit Day, and that's something, one of the few things that's carried on. And it's changed a little bit, but you know, overall it's pretty much the same thing. We still do things, we keep score, and we used to do that in Penny Wars. Actually, I take that back. I don't think we've done Penny Wars in a few years now. We have to bring that back too. So, but we still have Spirit Day, and I remember one time, again, probably in the late 90s, they decided to paint my head and painted a mural on my head, basically, with pictures of people's faces. Everyone's come up here painting my head, and I found out when I went home, someone did it with a Sharpie. It took me weeks to get it, and I can't hide that. And I'm sitting there scrubbing it with Ajax and like this. I couldn't, you know. So I had this black gray mark over here. So people were like painting with their fingers, and someone came up at one point and did something, I didn't really notice it, and it was a Sharpie. It was like a little face with evil eyes, and I'm like, that's not coming off. Spaghetti Bridge contest. I always remember a couple of things there. We used to have a couple of people come in from the news, like Channel 10. On the other hand, we had another guy from Channel 12, a sportscaster. I can't remember his name. He was good. But I remember the first year I did it, I think the first year was like 700, 800 pounds of, and then it got to this bizarre, like how they built spaghetti bridges that could, they used to have to bring a machine from a URI to go in and crush the bridges. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing how they did that. It's, you know, to me, I always wanted to build one and put a brick in it and build spaghetti around it. You can't beat that. Exactly. So, Mr. Hamill and I think we were thinking of doing that, getting a brick and building spaghetti around it and say, here's ours. I remember going over to Mrs. Pratt's house to get weights. Her husband used to lift weights. Went down there to get weights because they needed weights before they had the crusher. Loading in my car and my minivan, my wood grain minivan, 90s. And the next year they got the pressure machine at URI, and they use that from now on. But I remember that, yeah, it was amazing stuff. It really was. So, we haven't done that stuff in a while, yeah, and maybe we should try to bring that back. Class A, we do, but we were just talking about that. It's become a lot less formal than it used to be. I was just looking at pictures, and used to have things on the stage, and we had the chair, and we had a very official looking. Now it's become very informal, and the kids come in and they're not dressed up the way they should be. Some kids only wear their gowns, and we did it last week, and we were talking about that the other day, and we said maybe we should bring back some formality to it. It's not very official anymore. We still do it, and we still do the swords, but it's just not the same. It's wow. Lights go off automatically around here now. Yeah, I know, we have to go over out there. So, one of the things that I'm very blessed to be a part of, and we still have, the faculty has grown immensely compared to what it was. When I was here, there were 5 people in the English department. Now I think there are 10 teachers in the English department. You know, I haven't taught in that in 15 years. Yeah, 15 years. But it's everything has grown a lot. But I will say, if you talk to kids who graduated a couple of years ago, one of the things they say is that they always like the family atmosphere, because we do. And one of the things that we've always had as a faculty over the years is we can set rules. You go into some schools and very, you know, in the hallways, you know, give me a pass, and now you go up to a kid, you know, it's not that way. You go up to a kid, you're going to the bathroom or something like that, and they say, yeah, and we trust kids here. And there are always going to be people who will take advantage of, you know, that. But we've always argued that if you trust kids, they'll tend to give you that trust back. I would say that one of the things that's really, again, a blessing for me personally, and I think everyone who goes through here, that there is a family atmosphere here. And that's one thing I think we've maintained over the years. People became a part of the building, and you know, now it's, you know, I had to remember those days now. You jogged my memory. So, Tom of Bedlam, that's what Mr. Smith's.
Matt Hatters.
I remember doing that one year. I remember playing King Henry, and I remember playing on Danny Ashworth's acres of farm, whatever it was. I remember walking along and having to act in different areas. And at the end of that, we walked into a area. It was all fenced in, and everyone had to kneel down. I remember being there, being the king. I didn't have to kneel down. Everyone got down, and they got up, and everyone's knees were sort of muddy. I said, and later on I found out it was in a horse, corral, and I knew they were kneeling down, and I said, that's why it's the old Monty Python. So I've had a lot of good principals over the years, and not so good in some cases. I love Mr. Clement.
Yeah.
We were talking about him today, Mr. Himmel and I remember one year we were picking classes in the English department, and we were halfway through. He came in the meeting, you're teaching this, you're teaching this, you're teaching this. And we agreed with Mr. Himmel, and I agreed. And, he was a good manager, and he was a good principal. We've had some bad ones too. But I actually went to Jamestown for a year. I came back, and then we had a interim principal who was okay. And Miss Boulay came in. She was very, very student-oriented. I remember one year I was teaching a senior project class in 2007, and we had a couple of low-level kids who were getting lost in the bigger class, just getting lost. I went into her and I said, and halfway through the year, I said, we got to do something for these kids. They need attention to get the senior project at that point was a really intense thing. Yeah. And she came in the next day. She said, I'm going to put those kids in one class. Are you willing to teach it? And I said, yeah. And she changed schedules around, but she did it. And I'll be honest with you, it was probably, there were a lot of good times I had, but one of the most rewarding times is working with that group of students who are very needy, very low level, but they all finished in. They did really cool stuff, but she made that happen. You miss that. Miss Bullard was fantastic though. So those years in the mid-90s were probably one of the formative years for me as a teacher. I learned a lot from everyone that I worked with back then, and over the years as a teacher, your first year is really indicated whether you want to do this, but then later on you start to grow as a teacher, and I think you guys have taught me so much as a person, as a teacher, and hopefully I was able to give something to you guys, but you certainly have all given something to me, and I thank you. And again, looking at those pictures, I'm feeling like I'm 150 years old. It's my 26th year teaching, and 24 of those years have been here. You look back and you say, could you have spent time elsewhere? Yeah, but I'm glad I did what I did. When generations change, you're growing with that, and you're seeing that. You're a part of it. And one of the things that if you stay close to the students that you work with, you realize that you change it, which is a good thing. Every generation thinks they're wiser than the generation before them and smarter than the older generation. Every generation's like, we did it right, and that's not the case. And being a teacher, you can see that, you can actually live that, and so you're always sort of stuck in high school, which is a good thing. You're young, you have to be young to be a part of their lives. I've been very blessed to be a part of Exeter West Greenwich, and now it's really a part of who I am.